quiet spine, the dread of being seen by something that shouldn't know you exist. The seventh stick and the surveyor's debt. The grove does not end where the trees thin. It ends where memory gives up. At the northern bend, the soil is black and slow, like blood that chose not to dry. The air holds a scent that sits between copper and wet paper. Nothing decays there. Things are kept. Children used to run the perimeter on dares. They counted paces and promised to stop at 10. Most turned back at 6. The ones who reached 7 found the circle. 7 sticks stand in the center, driven into ground that never frosts. The wood is pale, almost translucent, and sweats when the temperature drops. The bark has split and healed around shapes that rose from below. The shapes are letters. The letters are names. The names were not cut in. They were pushed up by the roots, season after season, the way a buried thing tests the dirt above it. For decades, the 7th stick was bare. The other 6 held names that the county had already printed in obituaries. Then the state sent a surveyor. He came with new equipment and the kind of certainty that looks like arrogance only after it fails. He unfolded a map that still believed in property lines. He stepped into the circle because the circle was the only flat ground for his tripod. He did not notice the ground warm under his boots. He did not notice the sticks lean, not in the wind, but in attention. He measured, recorded, and told the grove it was 40 acres of disputed timber. The grove recorded him back. The next morning, the 7th stick had a name. His. The surveyor still submits reports. They are always blank when he mails them. They are always full when they arrive. His handwriting has changed. It matches the script on the other 6 sticks. He walks the perimeter now. Every night, he counts to 7 and starts over. The antlers in the canopy count with him. They have his eyes. He has not left because the ground has his weight and the circle has his number. The grove does not collect bodies. It collects completeness. The night ledger and the 17 that scream. South of the grove, the road forgets how to be straight. Asphalt thins until it confesses to being mud. The mud is not deep. It is deliberate. It keeps footprints longer than photo paper. The barricade arrives when doubt does. Logs thick as torsos, bound with chains that were never made for timber. The metal has no rust, only a film that looks like sweat. The sign is hand, painted in a color that stays wet in rain. The message is misspelled because the hand that wrote it learned letters from listening to last words. Road closely ahead. Do not proceed. The error is not a mistake. It is bait for the careful. The careful stop to read. The careful become readers. 17 shapes line the top log. From a distance, they are roosters. Closer, the details fail. Too many joints in the legs. Too many lids for the eyes. They do not roost. They audit. They face the direction. the road wants you to avoid, and they wait for the sound of poor decisions. A freight driver found the barricade during a dry February. His dash clock stopped at 3:13. His GPS cycled through languages it did not know. His headlights dimmed, not from power loss, but from disinterest, as if the dark ahead was too dense to bother illuminating. He set the brake and stepped out to move one log. The chains did not rattle. The logs did not roll. The entire barricade came a foot closer, like a tide that chose a direction. The roosters opened their beaks. The noise was not a crow. It was a composite, a child calling for a mother, a man negotiating with a skid, a woman realizing the ice would not hold. 17 endings played at once, tuned to the key of his name. He ran. The mud took his left boot and kept it upright, laces still tied. He made it to a diner 9 miles back. The diner had no customers and a calendar from 3 years prior. The waitress refilled his coffee without being asked and called him by the name on the 7th stick. The truck was never recovered. The boot is still there. It points north. The road does not block. It curates. It turns the unwilling around and the willing forward. The mill is always forward. The apprentice grinder and the weight of a name. The mill was not built. It was uncovered. The town grew around it because towns grow around work. Then the town realized the work was not for them. The town left. The mill stayed because hunger is not municipal. The building has no proper doors. The openings are more like mouths that forgot how to close. Inside, the air tastes like pennies and old contracts. The hum is not from motors. It is from the grinders. They are not metal. They are not stone. They are a dense absence that reduces things. They take whatever is fed to them and return a smaller, truer version. Gold becomes weight. Weight becomes debt. Debt becomes quiet. Sacks arrive on the workbench. No one carries them in. They are simply present, like dust, like regret. Each sack has a tag. The tags are not written. They are remembered onto the paper. A girl followed her brother's tag to the mill. The tag was tied with his shoelace. The lace was still in a bow. She opened the sack. There was no gold. There was no body. There was a figure, whittled from green wood. It had antlers. It had her brother's posture. The grain of the wood followed the lines of a name that had not been carved yet. The name was hers. She set the figure down and waited for terms. The mill does not offer. It posts. Condensation ran down the walls in narrow tracks, forming columns. The columns were a ledger. She read it without learning how. First column found. Second column delivered. Third column processed. Under her name, the third column was blank. The grinders slowed. The sound became individual voices. All the voices the roosters had saved. All the voices the grove had repeated. None of them were pleading. Pleading is inefficient. They were stating amounts. She understood the exchange. She could leave with the figure and become the reason someone else came south. She could leave with a memory of her brother and become a story that fed the road. She could stay and become the first new payment the mill had taken in a decade. A willing additive. She chose to leave. The mill allowed it because the system is patient. She walked out and her shadow did not. The shadow stayed and took up work near the grinders. It was good at sorting. That night the hum had a new note. The ledger had a new entry. The quiet spine does not want you dead. Dead things stop owing. It wants you incomplete. An unfinished person is a renewable resource. The first bargain and the man who sold ache. There was no mill at first. There was a creek that ran too straight and a valley that held fog like a cupped hand. The soil was good. The trees were just trees. The road went somewhere. A man lived at the bend. With a name, the county still prints on deeds. When it needs to sell land, no one will buy. He was not cruel. He was empty in the way a dry well is empty. Useful if you are thirsty enough to ignore what lives at the bottom. Winter took his crop. Fever took his wife. Debt took his sons one at a time. Conscription papers folded like napkins. He kept the farm because stopping is another kind of death. And he was not ready for either kind. One night the creek did not freeze. Steam rose from it in shapes that held for too long. The fog did not move with the wind. It moved with purpose, down from the northern ridge, through the bare trees, across his field, to his porch. It stopped at his door. The cold that came with it was not temperature. It was attention. The man understood without being told. The land had an offer. Not words, not a contract. A weight on the chest that said, "You can stop hurting if you give me something that hurts others." He had nothing left but ache. He traded it. The next morning, the creek ran clear. His fever was gone. The barn had 7 new fence posts, pale and smooth, standing in a perfect circle where no circle had been. The posts were warm. He did not plant that spring. He did not have to. The posts grew. They grew leaves that were not leaves. They grew shadows that were not attached to light. Travelers started using his road to avoid the flooded one by the river. They slept in his barn. Some left before dawn. Some did not leave. The ones who did not leave were found later, but smaller, reduced, as if a large part of them had been filed down to fit in a sack. The man lived 40 more years. He never hurt again. He never felt again. That was the price the fine print does not list. The spine learned from him that humans will trade anything for relief. It learned that relief is the cheapest currency. When the man finally died, the posts were trees. The trees had names under the bark. His was the first. The system had its root. It had its hunger. It had its method. Why the grove learned to count. After the first bargain, the circle was quiet for a season. Then the fog brought a child. The child was chasing a ball. The ball rolled into the ring of posts. The child followed. The posts were trees now. The trees had learned stillness from the man. They had learned patience from the fog. They did not know children. They knew absence. The child was an absence that moved. The child touched the first tree. The bark was warm. The warmth moved up the arm and counted a rib. The second tree counted another. The third tree counted a tooth. The fourth tree counted a name. The child had not been given yet. The fifth tree counted a birthday that had not arrived. The sixth tree counted a mother's voice. The seventh tree had nothing to count. It was incomplete. The child left the circle. The ball stayed. The seventh tree kept the space where the ball had been. That night, the wind moved through the grove and did not sound like wind. It sounded like a number being tried out. 7. The trees repeated it because the seventh was empty, and emptiness is a question. The next traveler answered it. Then the next. The grove learned that 7 was the size of a wanting. Not 6. 6 was a family, and families defend themselves. Not 8. 8 was a crowd, and crowds scatter. 7 was a group with one space left. One space is a hook. One space is a mouth. The grove began to keep a list. Not on paper, on wood. The names rose slow. A letter a year, pushed up by roots that had tasted the first bargain. The grove counted, because counting is a way to eat without chewing. It still counts. It is very good at it. It knows your number is not on the list yet. It knows lists can be amended. The root cellar and the thing that drafts. Beneath the mill, there is a room that was not dug. It was disclosed. The floor is packed earth that does not take footprints. The walls are stone that was not quarried. The stones fit because the space between them decided to be small. In the center is a table. The table is not wood. It is a flattened section of root, wide as a wagon, dark as old blood. The surface is covered in lines. The lines are not carved. They are worn. They are a map that changes when no one looks. The map is always of the same place. The county, the grove at the top, the road through the middle, the mill at the bottom. Under all of it, a line that pulses. The spine. The room has a draftsman. It is not a person. It was never a person. It is a habit the root developed after the first bargain. It looks like a knot of light that forgot to be bright. It moves over the table, and the lines adjust. When a name rises in the grove, a new mark appears on the map. When the barricade slides a foot closer, the road on the table shortens. When the grinders take a shadow, the mill on the map gains a tooth. The draftsman does not create. It records. The system creates by being recorded. That is the trick. The root learned that if it writes down what it wants, the world above becomes obedient to the text. The first thing it wrote was the man's relief. The second thing it wrote was the number 7. The third thing it wrote was the rule. Nothing leaves whole. The rest has been amendments. There is a blank space on the table. It is shaped like a person standing still. The draftsman is waiting for a name to put in the space. It is patient. It has been patient since the creek failed to freeze. The room has no door. You do not walk in. You are filed in. The filing is done by the parts of the system you have already met. The grove finds. The road delivers. The mill processes. The cellar drafts. The spine runs through all of them. It is not awake. Awake implies sleep. It is active. It is always active. The only sound in the room is the sound of a root growing 1 more millimeter. It sounds like paper being creased. The cellar finds you. No one finds the cellar. The cellar updates its inventory. The door was not on the mill blueprint. The county clerk's office has no record of a basement. The concrete floor of the mill is poured solid, 6 inches thick, reinforced with rebar that was new when the town still had a name. Yet the door appears when the draftsman needs a witness. It is not a door with hinges. It is a subtraction. A rectangle of floor that decides it was always open, with stone steps leading down into air that smells like paper left in a closed book for 40 years. The woman who went down was not looking for the cellar. She was looking for her brother's shadow. The mill had taken it and filed it as payment, and she had followed the hum until the hum became a stairwell. She carried no light. The dark below did not require one. The walls of the stairwell were not stone. They were packed earth that had been convinced to be vertical. The dirt held fingerprints that were not hers, pressed in from the other side. At the bottom, the room was waiting. The floor was earth that refused footprints. The walls were stones that fit because the gaps had been asked to leave. In the center stood the table. It was not built. It was exposed. A single root, flattened and broad as a barn door, black with age and use. The surface was covered in lines. The lines were not ink. They were where? They were a map that had been worried into existence by something that traces the same path for a century. The map was the county, the grove at the top, drawn as 7 small circles with a space between them, the road through the middle, drawn as a line that had been erased and redrawn too many times to be straight. The mill at the bottom, drawn as a mouth with teeth that were not teeth. Beneath all of it, a single thick line that pulsed. The quiet spine. The draftsman was already there. It was not a figure. It was not a shadow. It was a knot of dim light that held the shape of attention. It moved over the table without touching, and the lines changed to match what was happening above. A new name finished rising in the grove. draftsman passed over the northern part of the map, and a seventh circle darkened. The barricade slid 3 feet west to intercept a truck that had chosen a detour. The draftsman lingered on the road, and the line bent. The grinders in the mill took a memory of a mother's voice. The draftsman circled the mill, and another tooth appeared on the map. The woman understood the room before she understood herself in it. The cellar was not a place. It was a ledger that had learned to occupy space. The draftsman did not write the world. The world wrote itself, and the draftsman kept the minutes. The difference was academic. The result was the same. There was a blank space on the table. It was not empty. It was unassigned. It was shaped like a person, standing very still, arms at the sides, head tilted to read. The space was the same height she was. The draftsman moved toward it. She tried to step back. The earth of the floor did not allow the motion. It did not hold her. It declined to acknowledge that retreat was a concept the room supported. The stones in the wall exhaled. The sound was a ledger closing. The draftsman reached the blank space. It did not touch her. It passed into the shape, and the shape accepted it, because the shape had been drawn to accept it. The lines on the table shifted. Her name did not appear. Her outline did. The map now showed a figure standing in the cellar, looking down at a table that showed a figure standing in the cellar. She was not dead. She was not alive in the way the surface uses the word. She was filed. Her purpose was to be the amendment. The system had been running on the same 3 rules since the first bargain. The draftsman had been waiting for a 4th. The rule wrote itself in the where of the root, not in language. In consequence, first rule, the grove collects. Second rule, the road delivers. Third rule, the mill processes. Fourth rule, the witness remains. She became the part of the system that knows it is a system. The grove still counts to 7. The road still moves the barricade. The mill still takes payment. Now the cellar has a clerk. People still come down the stairs. They are never looking for the cellar. They are looking for brothers, for names, for shadows. They find the table. They find the map. They find her standing there, looking down. She does not speak. The room does not permit speech. She does not need to. The draftsman moves across the table and updates the lines. The map always has one more figure than it did before. The quiet spine is very precise with its bookkeeping, and the blank space on the table is gone. There is a new one forming at the edge, near the road. It is smaller. It is shaped like someone running.